Hey everyone, today I am so lucky to be able to interview the incredible Melissa Gijsbers. Melissa is an amazing author. She has written 3 books and had many short stories published in anthologies and journals. And her book 321 Done, which I have right here, features a character with chronic fatigue syndrome, which is incredible. I think Melissa is an inspirational author because of how she represents people living with chronic fatigue syndrome in her children's books, Rachel and Dan, which is great because representation absolutely matters, especially in children's literature. Melissa, thank you for letting me grow you.
Thanks for having me.
Are you ready to get started?
Ready when you are.
Did you always know you wanted to be an author?
I always loved to write. I've still got stories that I wrote when I was in about grade 2. I discovered when my parents were downsizing their house and gave me boxes of old schoolwork and things. But when I was in high school, I was told that being an author wasn't a viable career option. I was encouraged to go elsewhere, and I came back to writing in about 2011, came back to writing fiction.
That's awesome that you managed to go into that. And I'm glad you did because your books are amazing.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a bit about 321 Done? What ages would you recommend it for and who would love it?
Well, 321 Done, the main character Tony is in grade 6. So upper primary school is what it's aimed at, but it's also great for any child who has chronic fatigue syndrome as a way to explain to people what it's all about.
I absolutely loved the book. It was incredible. So definitely. What has been your favourite scene to write out of 321 Done?
321 Done was inspired by a true story. My younger son has chronic fatigue syndrome, and my older son is really fast at solving the Rubik's Cube. And he did a fundraiser at his school, which is what inspired the story. And I really enjoyed writing the scene about the fundraiser itself because it was just fun, and to put in the drama of the cubes breaking and things like that, which actually happened on the day. That was a lot of fun, even though my son kept correcting my terminology, my cubing terminology. But that was good.
So they actually broke on the day.
Yes, and it happens at competitions and things, bits pop off.
Well, I'm glad it went so well, even though the cubes broke.
Yeah.
The main character was inspired by your son with chronic fatigue syndrome. Did you keep his character traits and personality the same, or make lots of changes? And is he happy with the way you told the story?
Well, both of the main characters are inspired by my 2 sons. I did a bit of tweaking of their characters. And I think that things like the way that Tony got irritated at having to give messages to the school and things like that, I played that up a bit because in reality, my older son was actually at high school and my younger son was at primary school. So they're actually at 2 different schools, whereas in the book, they're both at primary school. So I did take a little bit of creative license. But essentially, if you know my kids, you'll recognise them in the book.
Okay.
And they helped me write the story, so they approved it.
That's awesome. So you had like little helping minions with the book.
Yeah. And I would write a chapter at night and show them the next morning. If I hadn't written a chapter, they'd be there going, "Mum, where's the next chapter?"
That's so cool. You have two sons. Your older son actually did a really big fundraiser for chronic fatigue syndrome. That's amazing. May you please tell us a bit about that for people who haven't read the book?
Mm-hmm. Well, my younger son got sick when he was 9. He had glandular fever, and it took us over a year to get a diagnosis of chronic fatigue syndrome. And in that time, it was really hard on my older son because he really loves his brother. And with something like chronic fatigue syndrome, there's not a lot that you can actually do to help. So he came along to the appointment where we got the diagnosis at the Royal Children's Hospital. And on the way home from the hospital, said, hey, let's see how many times I can solve the Rubik's Cube between the Balti Bridge and home. And so that's what he did. And during that time, he was, saying, oh, I wonder if I can use this to raise money for chronic fatigue syndrome. At that point, we didn't know about any organisations or anything like that, but it started an idea. So what he ended up doing, and so he was deciding on a way to do a fundraiser at his school to see how many times he could solve the Rubik's Cube during lunchtime and get people to pay a gold coin donation for a guess. And the SRC, so the Student Representative Council, also sold spiders to add to the fundraiser. And we contacted the local cubing shop and got some cubes donated. So we had a prize for the person who had the closest guess, and the entire school community came out and supported it, which was fantastic.
That's amazing. Your son is so amazing to be able to do that. I can totally relate to the chronic fatigue syndrome. It is really hard. You write fantasy books for middle graders as well. What was your inspiration for Lizzie's Dragon, and what is that about?
Yeah, Lizzie's Dragon, I had a friend who read my first book, and he said, oh, have you ever considered writing a fantasy story? And I said, well, no, but I'll give it a go. And we came up with an idea for a water-breathing dragon. And this was at the start of bushfire season. So it's an Australian fantasy story that involves bushfires, water-breathing dragons, and annoying little brothers.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, I have 2 brothers, so.
Did you get the inspiration for the annoying brother from them?
Not so much. I think it was more a mixture of my brothers, my kids, my nephews, and any other sibling relationship that I know about.
So now we're into the speed question.
Mm-hmm.
What are you writing at the moment?
I'm actually not writing. I'm preparing a picture book that we're hoping to publish next year. So I've just finished the editing process for that, and it's now with my illustrator.
What's your favourite ice cream flavour?
I really like boysenberry ripple, but if that's not available, I like a really nice vanilla ice cream.
Oh, boysenberry ripple, that sounds amazing. I'm going to have to try and find some of that ice cream.
Okay, I love it.
What's one of your favourite stories you have written?
I've written? That's a really hard one. I really love Lizzie's Dragon. It seems to be the most recent story that I've published seems to be my favourite, because every time I publish a story, I feel like I get a little bit better at what I do every time.
How long did it take you to write your books?
Ooh. The first draft, if if all the ducks align, I can write a first draft in 2 weeks of a chapter book. The editing process takes longer. Lizzie's Dragon, it took 9 months from first draft to publication. Swallow Me Now was about a year. And 3, 2, 1 Done was about 6 months. But the picture book that I'm working on, I wrote the first draft in 2012. And it's now 2019. So that one took a little bit longer.
So you managed to get a first draft in like a week.
Yes.
It takes me a week to get a chapter. The first draft chapter done.
Yeah, well, I set myself a goal where I try and write a chapter a night. I'm involved with a thing called the Chapter Book Challenge, where it's in March. The aim is to write a chapter book in a month, a draft of a chapter book. And so I say, okay, in this challenge, I'm going to write 1 chapter every night until it's done and aim to get it done. And I find if I do that, I can usually write it in about 2 weeks.
So that's kind of like NaNoWriMo?
It's like that, but the idea is to write a chapter book, and that's how I actually got these 2 done. Because you set your own word limit, which I prefer because writing 2,000 odd words a day in November in Australia is very challenging. But with the chapter book challenge, I set my own word count, I set my own limits, and because we're writing for kids, so like one of the drafts that I wrote was only actually about 1,000 words, because it was an early reader and it's actually pretty bad, so I don't know if I'll ever do anything with that. But the thing that I like about it is I can set my own limits and I can set my own goals. And I seem to prefer the shorter books rather than writing the shorter books and the longer books.
Who was your favourite or most inspirational author?
That's a really hard one. My favourite author seems to be almost whoever I'm reading at the time. But one of the authors that I really look up to is Jackie French. I love that she's written picture books, chapter books, novels, non-fiction, fiction, like everything. And yeah, she's also really encouraging to new writers. And yeah, we follow each other on Twitter and often have little chats. And she's great because she answers questions and things as well, which is brilliant. And I just think she's an all-around amazing person. And she shares really cool wombat videos.
I love wombat videos.
I love wombats.
So awesome. Yeah, I also love Jackie French. I love her books. I love her social media. I love everything. She's just amazing.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Do you prefer cats or dogs?
I actually prefer lizards. My youngest son, since he was 5, really loves lizards. So we actually have a pet blue-tongued lizard called Jody. So when he's having a really bad day with chronic fatigue syndrome, he lies in bed and cuddles the lizard.
Oh. That sounds like a really nice lizard.
She's awesome, but she's sleeping at the moment.
Do you prefer reading ebooks or hard books?
I prefer reading hard books. I actually have a chronic health issue myself that makes it harder for me to read on screens. So I find that reading the hard books, it's easier for me. Plus I also love, especially for picture books, I love reading them to my nephews, and there's nothing that beats reading a story like a hard book to a 3-year-old. It's pretty special.
I can definitely relate to not being able to read ebooks because of little headache thing. Yeah, I just really love art books too.
And I love collecting them. And you can't sign an ebook.
I know, you can get a signed book, you can't get a signed ebook.
Exactly.
Where is your favourite place to write?
I actually quite like writing in my local cafe, even if it's noisy, because I get people to come and bring me my cup of tea, and I can sit and write, and I'm not distracted by the washing or the dishes or anything like that.
Yeah.
And having the white noise of the cafe around actually helps me block out, all distractions.
Yeah. Sometimes white books are just best.
Mm.
Yeah. And the stuff that needs to get cleaned can be so distracting when you just want to write. Like, it can be pushed
Yeah.
to another day.
Yeah, and I often sit there and look at the basket of washing or sit there and go, oh, the dishes really need to be done or the dinner needs to be cooked or whatever. But if I'm at the cafe, it's sort of, no, I'm here, I'm sitting, I'm having my chai, I'm writing, and that's it.
Do you remember the first book you ever read or your favourite childhood book?
When I was a kid, my family lived in Nepal for 3 years. And so from when I was 5 to when I was 8, and I can remember being given Storm Boy by Colin Thiel to read. Was probably about 7, and they gave it to me to read because it was Australian. I can't remember much about the actual content of the book, but I can remember being given it to read when I was about that age. That and Grug, because I can still recite Grug, 30 years later.
What's your biggest achievement so far?
My biggest achievement in writing?
Anything?
Anything. Oh, I don't know. In writing, I think it's getting out there and publishing, because my first 2 books I self-published, and kids are enjoying them, which I think is the best thing, and they're still buying them and reading them. Swallow Me Now's been out for 5 years and people are still buying it, which is great. But also the fact I'm a single mum, I have 2 kids with chronic health issues and chronic health issues myself, and we're still standing, and I'm following my dreams of being an author. I think that's a pretty good achievement.
That's an amazing achievement. Do you have any big goals for the future, or any new writing lists, or are you kind of just chilling?
Well, I'm publishing a picture book next year, and my goal for that is to have a book launch for my birthday. And my birthday's in October, so we're kind of hoping to have it ready for then. So that's kind of my next big writing goal, as well as just to keep on writing.
Do you have any advice for young writers?
My biggest advice is to follow your own path. So if you find your own voice, find your own way of doing things, because not everything suits everybody. So, for example, NaNoWriMo is great, but it doesn't suit everybody. And if you can't do it, doesn't matter. If you like to plan your books, that's great. If you don't like to plan your books, that's fine too. You've got to just follow your own path. And it's the same with publishing. If you want to go to a publisher, great. If you want to self-publish, that's great too. Just follow your heart, follow your path.
Amazing advice. I definitely believe that every young writer needs to hear that. Thank you so much for letting me interview you. This has been incredible.
No problems, anytime. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Make sure to like and share the video so we can share how extraordinary Melissa is.